Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yep, live around the world on the interwebs at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends, and good morning to you. That beautiful ball of plasma in the sky is amazing. Looked out over I was filling my water jug this morning, looking out over the kitchen sink, out over the hills, and that beautiful thing. I think we call it the sun. I haven't seen it in a couple of days. It was right there over the hills, looking so beautiful. It was just another beautiful day here on top of the world down here in Homer. And we are ready to go for today, Tuesday, the Tuesday edition of the show. And that means the weekly top three. And Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets is on board with us this morning to go through the weekly top three. The big three topics for the week that he thinks are important that we should be paying attention to. And we're going to go through all that this morning as well. Normally, Chris Story joins us an hour or two, but he is traveling. And so today I'm going to do some recap and some other things. And then I don't know. I mean, those are some big shoes to fill. I don't know if I can be super positive at the end of the show today. I'm going to try my best to be super positive, but we'll see what happens. No promises, right? No promises. That's what it's all about here. Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets joins us this morning to get ready for our big three. Good morning, Brad. How are you this morning?
Michael, I'm doing great. I tried to bring my own version of the sun this morning for you.
I got no audio from Brad. Hold on a second here. Brad can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. There we go. That's because I didn't have something. I keep forgetting I changed something when we had that problem last week. And I actually just had to turn up this. I just had to push the slider up. There we go. So I'm sorry, Brad, you were saying something about your shirt. What was that?
I said, well, I was trying to bring my own version of the sun for you.
Yeah.
For you.
Oh, yeah.
For
You
this
got
week's
your bright hoodie there. Yeah. No, it was amazing. I was like, wow. I was holding my hands over, like the sun was like right there. What is that thing? What is it? What is it? What does it mean? Anyway, it was a great time here this morning as we're getting ready to go. All right, Brad.
And let me say, there's no one who can do what Story does. As positive as you could possibly be.
I know.
I can never be positive, but as positive as you could possibly be, you could never match Chris Story.
Are you positive that I can't be as positive as Chris Story? No, I mean, the guy is a font. He is a font of optimism. That is 100% for sure. All right, well, let's dive into today's discussions and talking points. We're going to start off with the number one thing right out of the gate. The governor has decided to start talking about some stuff with the Cosmo unit, the Cosmopolitan, the gas unit out in the Cook Inlet, the one that's run by Blue Crest. And apparently they're threatening to revoke, to shut down. Who knows? What do we got going on here?
So it's the commissioner of the Department of Natural Resources, John Boyle. It's not the governor. So let's not elevate it more than it needs to be.
Well, directly. You're right. I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead.
No. I just before the governor's allies start complaining to us that we're invoking the governor's name unnecessarily. It is Commissioner of Natural Resources, John Boyle. The headline in the ADN and elsewhere around the state is from a Nat Hertz article. The headline is amid Alaska natural gas crunch, state could revoke leases from company whose drilling has stalled. And what they're talking about is as you said, Blue Crest's Cosmopolitan unit that's down near you, off Anchor Point in the Cook Inlet. And the storyline basically is Boyle has issued a notice of default, which is a technical step, a legal step that you do as an administrator of units and leases in Alaska, a notice of default to Cosmopolitan for breach of its plan of development, and the penalty for if you ultimately find them in breach, the ultimate penalty is to terminate the unit and terminate the leases, and upon termination they revert back to the state. And it is a dramatic penalty in Alaska. I can't recall a major unit. I can recall some minor leases, but I can't recall a major unit that's gone through a default, at least in the last 30, 40 years in Alaska. And so it's a fairly major step. What's going on is this. Cosmopolitan is a unit, several leases banded together into a unit that has some production from oil, some production of oil, but also has a huge natural gas find, or at least what Blue Crest says is a huge natural gas find in the Cook Inlet that has never been developed. And the reason it hasn't been developed is because it's offshore, and it would take either some cutting edge technology or just plunking a platform out in the Cook Inlet to out over the natural gas deposits to produce it, both of which would be very expensive and carry some risk. Cosmopolitan's never undertaken that investment because the economics of it are fairly difficult. The problem with a huge find or a significant find like that is you need a market to be able to monetize it. If you're going to make that investment, you need a market to be able to monetize the production, the volume of production that you're going to get out of it, to be able to pay off the investment, to make a return. And the problem with the Cook Inlet, at least since the time when the Agrum plant shut down and we stopped exporting gas out of the the old ConocoPhillips LNG terminal. The problem with the Cook Inlet has been it's got a fairly small market, and it's got significant coverage by existing contracts of that market. So if you have a huge find, if you have a significant find, and you make all this investment and you have to monetize it by significant amounts of production and significant amounts of sale, there really isn't an opportunity to do that in the Cook Inlet because you don't have the markets that can absorb that type of investment. So it's sort of a
even with the Alaska, I mean, even though we're challenged right now with our own gas, it's not are you saying it's not a big enough market to offset those investments?
Well, the problem, the challenge with it is that shows up sort of gradually over time. We start having exposure of tranches of market that is not covered by contracts. And you need production to sort of ease into that. That's why the incrementalism of LNG imports or the scalability of LNG imports is so attractive, because you can sort of ease into that one ship at a time, or adding another ship on top of that, another delivery on top of that. And so it's not really, the market just doesn't show up, bam, all of a sudden. I'm not sure I've ever run the economics, even if all the market disappeared tomorrow, whether the scale of that market availability is enough to make Cosmopolitan economic. It may be, but it doesn't show up that way. The market doesn't show up that way. It shows up in these tranches. So Cosmopolitan's never been developed. And we have this, I mean, as you quickly pointed out, we have this juxtaposition of this Cook Inlet crisis, of production, or of lack of production, lack of gas, compared to the Cosmopolitan volume sitting out there, the field sitting out there, that could help offset part of that issue. So it's never been developed, and now we're getting to the point. I mean, it's really sort of odd, right? You talk about the Cook Inlet crisis. You got Cosmopolitan sitting there. Blue Crest hasn't developed Cosmopolitan, and so you start saying, well, why haven't they developed it? And should I be considering taking steps to terminate their lease to get somebody else in there that would that would develop it? The economics aren't going to change, though, no matter. I mean,
well, yeah, that was my question, because if it doesn't work for them because they can't get enough investment because there's not enough money to be returned on the other side. I mean, the state of Alaska, one of the article made it sound like the state is like, oh, there's just people chomping at the bit to get in here and do this and take over this lease and do it. Is there really? Because if they were, wouldn't they want to buy the lease from Blue Crest, or wouldn't they want to at least partner up or invest? I mean, if the economics worked, wouldn't, I mean, that's the thing. The market needs to play out. Is this kind of pressure helpful?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that you get a little concerned about is, are there investors out there? And is Blue Crest asking too much in terms of participation, the economics of their participation? Is Blue Crest trying to negotiate too hard a deal to get those investors in here? I doubt that. I mean, I doubt that Blue Crest is saying, oh, you've got to give us a chunk of money and you won't see a return for 10 years because we want to get our return first. I doubt that that's what's going on. And so you've got to question whether we gain anything other than, nice headlines of, hey, you guys didn't develop the field, so we terminated you. Whether you gain anything other than those nice headlines. Alaska's always been a bit odd, not odd, but odd compared to the rest of the industry. In the lower 48, when you have lease problems like this, what happens, and you have economic fields and you have good production or good prospects, what happens is somebody comes in and what's called top leasing in the lower 48. The leaseholder, which is the lessor, which is the landowner or the mineral interest owner, will negotiate a lease with somebody that says, look, if this lease terminates, you get the lease. It sits on top of the existing lease. If the existing lease goes away, then the top lessee takes the position of the existing lessee, and that sort of creates litigation about whether or not the existing lease is valid or not. We don't have that in Alaska, and Alaska goes out of its way, frankly, to hang on to existing lessees because the investments up here are so capital intensive and so time intensive over a span of years that once you've got somebody, you want to sort of keep them on the hook. You want to threaten them every once in a while, maybe, but you want to keep them on the hook and keep pushing them, because the time it would take to recreate where they are at any given point would be significant. The time and investment it would take for someone new to come in and recreate where an existing lessee is at any given point would be significant. Even more so in this case, because the facility isn't out there. The facilities aren't out there to produce this gas. That's the problem. Blue Crest hasn't put them in, hasn't made the investment to put them in. So a new lessee coming in would face the same issues as Blue Crest. That is, the technological challenge of getting the facilities out there and the cost of getting the facilities out there. So have you really gained anything by terminating this lease?
Right.
So it's an issue. I mean, some people say, oh, well, there's gas. Hillcrest or Blue Crest isn't producing it, and so terminate them and get somebody else in there to produce this gas. It's not that easy. There's a reason the gas isn't being produced.
Right.
There's a reason that Blue Crest hasn't followed through on the lease obligations, and it's not clear that terminating them is going to advance the ball toward the objective of getting that gas produced anytime soon. What the state really should want to do, and probably what's going on here, is the state wants to scare Blue Crest enough and threaten the economics of what they've invested already enough to force them into a sale to somebody. Probably Hillcorp, preferably Hillcorp, who has existing know-how and existing facilities inside the Cook Inlet to be able to come out and do this. So there's a tension going on here, a game the state's playing, probably targeted ultimately on a sale. But it's interesting, and to hear people say, oh, yeah, absolutely, we ought to terminate that lease. They haven't produced anything. It's time to get somebody in there that will. It's not that simple.
Well, and how much of this is pressure? Because Blue Crest and Hillcorp were in the midst of a deal in late 23, but they couldn't come to terms on profits and cost splitting, right? So they were going to joint venture and do some things. So is this just final thought here? Is this just more of a power play to push that deal or to push an outright sale, do you think?
It's a power play to push something, to push Blue Crest to do something. I think termination is probably the last thing the state wants to do, but it's a power play to push Blue Crest to do something. And if Hillcorp is that something, I mean, then you have further monopolization of the Cook Inlet. That's not good either, but it's a push to get Blue Crest to do something. And Blue Crest is sitting there going, look, we'd like to get money out of this deal. We'd like to do a deal with somebody, but it has to be on decent terms. And so, we're still trying to find that person out there.
And of course, creating a monopoly in the Cook Inlet, never a good. I mean, a monopoly at this point is not a great idea, but it seems to be the direction everybody is trying to push at this point. It's kind of crazy. All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. We are coming up on the break. We're going to continue in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/Michael Duke Show if you want to join us for the discussion. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, is our guest. The weekly top 3. Brad does this for fun. Who pays Brad for his weekly commentary? I mean, Brad does this for fun. I mean, I know it's weird, but he does it for fun. But yeah, the state is, I don't know, this push. Why would you want to conglomerate any more power into Corp, who's already shown that they will, I mean, I guess never let a crisis go to waste, right? I mean, it just seems like a monopoly in this case doesn't make much sense. I mean, it might make much sense from a vertical integration standpoint of only having one player out there so you don't have to duplicate effort, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't make much sense for Alaskans as consumers and producers to have a single source, because that means they're kind of at the mercy of the single source, right?
Yeah, we've sort of found that out. But Hillcorp already has an effective monopoly. I mean, I did the HHI's Herfindahl Index, which is how you measure the degree of market concentration in a market. I did the HHI's for a column a few weeks ago, and the HHI's are off the charts. I mean, they're in any other market, the Department of Justice, even the Trump Department of Justice or the Federal Trade Commission, whoever had jurisdiction over it, would be all over it. But we've already got effective monopolization, and with Hillcorp's pending acquisition or proposed acquisition, or I don't know, maybe completed by now, acquisition of Marathon's LNG terminal, the old ConocoPhillips LNG terminal, and turning it around to use it as an import, heck, that increases the HHI's even more. So Hillcorp already effectively has monopolization. This would be a big step, because of basically, if they acquired Cosmopolitan and if they produced it, it would take away the potential competition of LNG imports into the Cook Inlet as a potential competitor that has some constraining effect. So it'd be another huge chunk in it. But we're already at. I mean, we're at the stage where, what was it, last session, a year ago, when Kathy Giesel brought up the potential of fixing the C Corp tax issue, the S Corp tax issue. Hillcorp sent a letter that said, "Hey, we'll just shut down the Cook Inlet investment." They said it in kinder words than that, more lawyerly words than that, but basically said, "We'll shut down investment," and Giesel backed off. So, yeah, they're already exercising monopoly power out there. This would be another step in that.
Yeah, it's a nice gas field. To be a shame if somebody put the plug in it, right? I mean, that was kind of essentially what they said to Kathy Giesel, and got it squared away. So what do you think happens here, Brad, as you look at this tug of war? Is it just a warning shot? Is it just to play nice, play ball? What do you think is going to happen?
I think Boyle keeps pressing. I mean, we know the field's there. Blue Crest has made public statements about it being proven reserves, which means they have a high degree. I've never really heard proven reserves about a field that's never produced before, but proven reserves, and so they have a high degree of a high sense that the reserves are there. And I think DNR keeps pressing, but the problem is Blue Crest sort of sits there and goes, "Yeah, okay, you want to take it away from us?" you know it's not going to improve your situation any. So, and Blue Crest keeps saying, "Oh, why don't we have Ada give us more money? Give us more money to pursue the objective of development." It is not a good situation, and the reason it's not is because of the size of the Cook Inlet market. If we got an LNG line, I don't think we will, but if we got an LNG line down from the north and we had an LNG plant, that would change the dynamics a little bit. And Cosmopolitan would then sit there going, "Well, we have the potential of being able to export some of this," and that would change the dynamics. But by then, we will otherwise solve the Cook Inlet problem.
And we're not just talking about one lease, Chris. Chris says talking about one lease is not a monopoly. I mean, the problem is that there's not that many players. That the one lease is not that. It's just a continuation of a monopoly that's already kind of happening. Since there's only really essentially three main players in the Cook Inlet, and Blue Crest is one. So with Hillcorp being the dominant giant, that's what we're talking about. All right.
Chris needs to go back to Economics 101.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
All right, we're back right now. The weekly top 3 continues. We're on to number 2 of 3. Look, I can count, Mom. One-sided analysis really irritates Brad. I mean, Brad just gets, and is it really analysis? I don't know. I read this piece, and I mean, you're calling it one-sided analysis. I call it pablum for the masses at this point. It's not even really it. I was just irritated reading this article, Brad. It just like talked down to me like I was 5 or something. I mean, it's just the whole thing was. So go ahead. Tell me about how this one-sided analysis really irritates you.
Well, there's a paragraph that has an analysis in it, and I'll get to the paragraph in a second. But the opinion piece is from Kevin Berry, who's a UAA economics professor, which is what caught my eye and made me want to read the piece, because Kevin's pretty balanced about economic issues. The opinion piece is please and thank you. These are nice words that we can say. And it's about the legislature passing and in Kevin's view, the Governor Dunleavy supporting the extension of child care credits, both subsidies as well as tax credits for child care facilities and child care employees in Alaska. And the paragraph that sort of triggered me off was this. In a time when our child care providers are struggling with an economic model that cannot simultaneously provide care that is affordable to all families in need of care, while also paying wages that caregivers and teachers deserve, this funding is a lifeline. And basically, as an economist, what Kevin is saying, look, the economics of child care facilities don't work in the current Alaska free market. You don't get parents, potential users, potential customers of the child care facilities can't afford the prices it would take to be able to create and maintain these child care facilities and pay the wages that need to be paid to attract the workers that would need to be there to make the child care facilities work. That there's a gap in market forces between the willingness to pay or the ability to pay on the part of potential customers and the economics of what it takes to make that business model, the business model of childcare work. And so this funding, and what Kevin's talking about with this funding of the childcare credits, tax credits for corporations, basically, because we don't have taxes on anybody else, childcare tax credits, and the childcare subsidies. That funding is a lifeline to make the economics of childcare facilities work. What you're doing is you're essentially saying that there can be subsidies to the business side, the business model side, subsidies in terms of payments by government or tax credits to corporations who would then fund these childcare facilities and make the model work. They can then keep the rates low enough to make it attractive to parents, to fit the economics of parents. And all of that, I don't argue a lot with that economic analysis. But here's where I think Kevin fails. Here's where I think this article fails, and why it just irritated me to see it fail in this way. He's not considering at all the economic impacts, the economic side of who's paying for these credits, the economic consequences of generating the revenue necessary to fund these tax credits, to cover the gap created by these tax credits, or to fund the subsidies, the direct subsidies that are being paid by government to that particular business segment. And we know, it's not like it's a mystery out here. We know who the marginal source of revenue is for these sorts of programs, and it's PFD cuts. Right. And PFD cuts hit the very people that Kevin's tells us he's talking about in this article, middle and lower income Alaska families, hit middle and lower income Alaska families hardest. Indeed, one of Kevin's professors in UAA economics, Matt Berman, has said that PFD cuts push more people into poverty. And you can see how that is. If you're sitting on the poverty line, above the poverty line, you take out PFD income, you drop them below the poverty line.
Right.
And so you're pushing more people into poverty. You're affecting middle and lower income Alaska families. You're pulling revenue out from underneath, income from underneath middle and lower income Alaska families. You're making them poorer, and making them more economically challenged at the same time as you're using that money and then, funding childcare. So you're really subsidizing those in the middle and lower income Alaska families who have children and who are able to put those children into childcare. It's taking money out of everybody's pocket in order to subsidize one subset of that group. And it seems like the perfect opportunity when you're talking about childcare. It seems like the perfect opportunity to talk about the economics of the revenue side, the economic impacts on the revenue side, as well as the economics on the market side, on the spending side. And Kevin just completely doesn't do it. And I think that's it hugely irritates me, because that's what economists should be doing. They should be talking about both sides. They should be talking about the impact on both sides. They should be concerned as much about doing what they believe is needed to do on the market side as spending side. They should be as concerned about doing what needs to be done for those same goals, promoting families, keeping families together, allowing two income families, promoting those goals on the revenue side, because revenue policy can have an equally damaging effect on the revenue side. Revenue policy can, as spending policy can. So I think it's a huge loss, a huge absence of analysis that should have matched that paragraph that's talking about what's going on the market side, on the spending side.
Well, what I find amazing is here's an economist, a professor, right? I mean, he's an economist, and yet he's advocating for the government to come in and essentially distort the market, right? I mean, already the market distortions have happened with regulation and everything else, and basically saying that, the government needs to come in and bail this out because it's not economically viable, caused in part by the viability of. But what about the personal responsibility aspect, Brad? That's what kills me. You talk about the one paragraph that really caught your attention. What caught my attention was two paragraphs before that, when he says, I want to thank our leaders in Juneau who are making investments and making sure that access extends to more families, that more mothers and fathers can work if they choose, and more kids have access to quality care that prepares them for a lifetime of learning. This funding will enable more families to have the access to the dignity of work without sacrificing the safety of their children. What that says to me is, they're sacrificing their children. The dignity of work. You're making choices, and there are consequences to those choices. Why do you have children if you're just going to farm them off to somebody else for the dignity of work? I mean, it's competing, it's competing priorities here. And he's looking to the government to be able to make sure that everybody can have everything all the time. And that's the problem. You're an economist. That's not sustainable.
Yeah, well, you're asking a different question, and a valid question, and I certainly don't want to argue with the validity of it. No. But you're asking a different question than I am. I mean, I'm asking a much more. If you're going to
strictly economic question, I'm asking more of an overall arching question. Yes, I understand.
I'm asking, if you're going to say this about the market side, why don't you address the revenue side, the supply side? At the same side, the money supply side, at the same time, because they're both equally as significant issues. They both have the same equal impact. I mean, my God, you're talking about pushing people into poverty on the PFD. You're making PFD cuts, pushing people into poverty in order to support this lifestyle choice by a certain subsegment of middle and lower income, and indeed upper income. Indeed, top 20% Alaska families. I mean, there's no limitation on who can access childcare, and certainly you would expect some in the top 20% are doing it. So that's my issue. I understand your issue, and that may be a great issue for you to talk about in the next segment or in your segment. But Kevin should have focused on both.
I definitely see your point. Yeah, no, I definitely see your point from an economic standpoint of saying, hey, you can't talk about one without the other. What about the economic impacts of taking from one sector versus to feed another? Essentially, wealth redistribution in that regard. I totally understand that. I just find it ironic that these people, that this is obviously there's obviously a multiplicity of problems with his opinion piece, and you and I are catching just two of them together that are similar but different.
I mean, it's part of the much bigger issue of Alaska is a very expensive place to live, and Alaska is also small, sort of the same sort of economic issue as the Cosmopolitan issue. I mean, you don't have, from the childcare standpoint, you don't have a broad enough base in terms of either customers or workers to make the economics quite work. I mean, if you had a lot of customers, then the economics would work better. But Alaska is a small place. We don't have that many families. If you had a broad population of workers, then the economics would work better because you would have a broader group of people to bring in to help work in these things. And so it's sort of, Alaska is a tough place. Basically what we've done is we have asked government to support or government to subsidize living in this tough place, in this sort of economic environment, by subsidizing things that otherwise don't work in the limited market we have.
Right.
And that's, that would be Kevin's answer, I think, to your issue about why are we doing this at all? He would say, look, Alaska is a tough place. The costs are high. We need this sort of support in order to maintain living up here. But my retort to that is, okay, Kevin, I give you that. I'll give you that for the sake of argument, for the sake of continuing this discussion. I'll give you that. Then why is it okay to be pulling, income out of the pockets of the very people you claim to be, promoting? Why is it okay to be pulling income out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families in order to subsidize this one sort of small subset of Alaska families? And it's not. I mean,
it exacerbates the same problem. Think those people in middle and lower income are having exactly the same problem trying to get their own childcare, and now you're taking the money from them. I mean, it's a self-licking ice cream cone at least.
Yeah, and to some degree, to sort of use this to make another point I sometimes try to make. You're pulling money out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families to subsidize the top 20%, because top 20% people families are taking advantage of childcare as well. There's no limit on the subsidies related to income. The subsidies go to childcare providers, the employees, or they go to corporations who set up the tax credits go to corporations who set up the child care facilities, and so there's no income limit. The president of Conoco's, if he has children of this age, probably doesn't, but the children of the vice presidents of Conoco can go to their facility the same as the bottom rung employees can go to those facilities, but yet top 20%ers, but yet we're having middle and lower income Alaska families be the ones to subsidize that by taking income out of their pockets. It is a one-sided piece, in my view, a one-sided economic analysis of the argument designed to support the subsidies, but without thinking through the consequences of who's paying for the subsidies.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're coming up here on the break. We got to come back. We got one more dead ahead. We're going to talk about the governor's conference with Japan and more. What didn't happen is what we're going to talk about when we get back. Brad Keithley returns as our guest in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Brad, this reminds me of a opinion piece that was that we were listening to last week. And I'm sorry, I'm scrolling back to it because I was so agitated by the by the attitude of the person who wrote it. And again, it was talking about childcare and things like that. I'm sorry, I'm trying to, because I was just so essentially, I don't see it here right off the top, right out of the gate here in the opinion pieces. Essentially, the guy's telling a story about how he had two children. Oh, he's talking about Dunleavy's education and how the costs were being higher, and one kid went to school out of state and then didn't come home because they made cuts at the university, right? And then he had another kid who was had just gotten married, and they just had a kid, and they just bought a house, and they couldn't afford childcare, and they were both working. And I'm thinking, why is any of this my problem? I mean, they chose to, go to work. They chose to have a kid. They chose to buy a house. They chose all those things. And yet he's saying that what we needed more government subsidies so that they could continue to do all the things that they wanted to do. Where is the personal responsibility aspect of these things as well?
Yeah, well, there isn't. I mean, Alaska, we take for granted. I mean, I was there was a piece that I sent you and Rob from the Fairbanks News Miner about how heavily involved government subsidies are up in Fairbanks. Just shocked me. It's like 70% of every dollar starts with the government.
Yeah.
Up in Fairbanks, either federal government or the state government, just shocked me. I mean, we are a heavily subsidized state, and what you get both from the federal standpoint and from the state standpoint, and we're heavily subsidized because it's expensive to live up here. We don't have a huge market, and so we need basically price supports in order to have the kind of lifestyle that people say they want. I mean, we had this discussion back in the early 2010s with the artificial football fields, right? Putting artificial grass on football fields. We had a bunch of Texans who came up here who had played played football and wanted their kids to play football and wanted their kids to have wanted them to have the latest and greatest, wanted them to have artificial turf. And so we had the government paying for artificial turf on the friggin' high school football fields where you had like 2 games a year, 3 games a year. To subsidize that particular lifestyle. In Alaska, we've gotten used to this subsidized lifestyle, but now we've gotten to the point in the early 2010s, we were subsidizing it. In the mid 2010s, we were subsidizing it on the backs of future Alaskans because we were drawing down savings in order to maintain that lifestyle. Well, we ran through those. We ran through, the pot that we had set aside for future Alaskans. And now we're starting to have cross subsidization from middle and lower income Alaska families through PFD cuts to upper income Alaska families through childcare subsidies. And we've just gotten so used to it that we complain when there's not more, when we complain that there's not additional subsidies to make our life even easier up here.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's been the problem in Fairbanks for years, is that when you've got, approaching 50% of the people are working for government in one form or another, in that community. And then on top of that, everybody is, they're subsidized in one form or another through some form of government spending. It makes it very, very difficult. That makes it very, very difficult to see that as from an economic standpoint, for sure. But yeah, this is frustrating to watch this whole thing go on with this tug of war over, why not just let the free market work in the way that it's supposed to? We've got all this distorting and this malinvestment because government is interfering at every level instead of letting the market sort itself out. But it's just like we can't do that. And this is all, I think it comes back to, again, the power and the money of it.
Yeah, it is. That's part of it, certainly. I mean, legislators get to play hero by saying, "I'm going to sprinkle some fairy dust on your segment of the population, so you can, so you can thrive." I mean, why do we do it? We do it because otherwise we'd have 400,000 people instead of 750,000 people in the state. I mean, if we went to a pure market economy, the state would be a lot smaller. We saw what that was before oil, and we would see it again. And so what we've got is a bunch of people who say, "Oh, we don't want to go back to 400,000 people, and we want to come up here and we want to be able to live the Alaska lifestyle, but we want to live it with Texas price supports, Texas amenities." And so we want, since nobody else is doing it, we want government to do it. I mean, Kevin's article in that respect is just consistent with a bunch of other, articles.
Here we go. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, is our guest. We're going to continue on here. Number 3 of the weekly top 3. And that's what didn't happen at the governor's conference in Japan, as he was trying to go out there and shop the idea of an Alaskan LNG line out to the various Asian markets. Brad, what didn't happen that should have happened?
Well, I'm talking about the governor's sustainability conference last week, where he had the 3 administration officials and had a bunch of delegates, over 1,000 delegates is what the reports are, at the sustainability conference, and had the Secretary of Interior, Secretary of Energy, and the director or the administrator of the EPA up here, touring the North Slope, touring the Cook Inlet, focused on Alaska LNG, a lot of talk about Alaska LNG. Here's what the New York Times and other publications said in April was the focus of this conference. I'm quoting from the Times version. "A group created by Mr. Trump that is advising him on domestic energy production, the National Energy Dominance Council, is seeking to convene officials from the trade ministries of both Japan and South Korea for a summit in Alaska on June 2nd, according to 3 people with knowledge of the confidential outreach who requested anonymity. The project's proponents want to be able to announce at the summit, that they have received signed letters of intent from Japan and South Korea to invest in Alaska LNG or purchase its gas," the people said. Taiwan formally signed a similar letter of intent to purchase gas from Alaska LNG last month. So the goal, let's just step back a couple of months. The goal of the conference and the goal of getting the administration officials up here around the governor's sustainability conference was to have trade officials from South Korea and Japan participate and to sign letters of intent similar to Taiwan at the conference. Have a big signing party under the lights at the conference. Didn't happen. Now, there's reasons it didn't happen. South Korea is going through an election in which the incumbent administration, the incumbent president, was voted out, and a new president was voted in, who has significantly different policies in a number of areas, possibly including energy. Has a significant number of issues on that. So South Korea was in the middle of an election campaign and really not well placed to come sign things. Japan, on the other hand, has some political instability, but was not in the same place as Korea, and Japan could have I mean, doesn't have internal reasons why it didn't. Wasn't in a position to do so, but also didn't. They both had officials there, but the officials there at the conference, but the officials weren't particularly high ranking, and there was no discussion during the conference of those officials being in a position to sign letters of intent while they were at the conference. So you really have to sort of back up and say, okay, well, this was the goal of having the three administration officials up there. It was the goal of of part of the conference to have, a signing party, a public signing party with commitments, expressions of commitments by Japan and Korea, and it didn't occur. What does that say about the projects?
Right. Well, when you first sent me this topic, I thought I had to go, is he talking about the sustainable energy? Because again, it didn't really even make the news that there were officials from South Korea or Japan or, so I was like confused. What does it say for it? It doesn't look good from the outside as just a layman on the outside looking in. It's like, wait, I thought this was supposed to be the big, beautiful pipe thing. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, well, they made the most of what they had, which was they had three administration officials that could tour and talk about things and say great things. Although when asked, when the Secretary of Interior was asked whether the federal government would help pay for it, his reported answer, reported in the newspapers, was, well, you guys have a big sovereign wealth fund. You ought to pay for it. Not the federal government. So they made as good a thing as they could as what they had out of what they had, which was the three officials up from DC. But it didn't meet the goals that had been set for it, the objectives that had been set for it earlier. And I think it means a couple of things. One, it means the trade talks aren't very far along. Because the Japanese and the Koreans are not going to make commitments to Alaska LNG unless they're in conjunction with commitments on the U.S. side about trade. And the Japanese-U.S. discussions are going slow on trade. The Korean discussions are just going to wander around for a while the new government gets in place and figures out what its trade policy is and how to approach the Trump administration. So it means the trade talks are going much slower, I think, then one of the things it means is that trade talks are going much slower than otherwise anticipated. And I think for that reason, clearly Alaska LNG is going to go at a much slower pace. It also means that we don't know what the economics are, and nobody's going to make. Taiwan did, but they're so ephemeral. They're so off in the mist that they're not really commitments. Nobody's going to make significant commitments until we know what the economics are. And Glenfarne says they'll have the economics by the end of the year, which is sort of stunning. Even Exxon couldn't pull that off when they were trying to tie down the costs. But Glenfarne says they'll have the economics by the end of the year. And we're not going to have people stepping up. We're not going to have countries or companies, potential purchasers, stepping up to make these sorts of commitments until we have the economics down. So it probably was, if somebody had sat down, looked at the calendar and looked at where we were on the economics and looked at where we were on the trade negotiations, they probably wouldn't have made that prediction or that projection back in April, but they did. Right. And it didn't happen. It's significant that it didn't happen. The LNG conference or the sustainability conference made as much as they could with what they had, the three people up from DC. But this core goal didn't happen. And it sort of tells us that things are not on as good a track as some had hoped, and as some had projected at the time that they made those statements.
60 seconds now, Brad. You and I have talked about this, that there's a lot of pie in the sky going on, a lot of positivity. It's if we're going to talk it into existence, but the economics are the problem. That's what doesn't lie, right?
Yeah, economics rule. It has to pencil out. People are not going to jump. Countries are not going to jump and make these commitments because of trade deals, because the trade deals go away in 4 years when the administration changes. So fundamental economics rule.
And that's always been part of the problem with the Alaska gas line, is that the economics just don't work as they sit right now. Maybe something will change, but we won't know. I mean, Glenfarne says the end of the year. I think that's highly optimistic. we'll see what actually happens out of that. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Thank you, Brad.
As always, Michael, thanks for having me.
Folks, we got hour 2 dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Yeah, I mean, I've run into people. Somebody bent my ear the other day when I was at the Harborfest thing, and they're so excited. The gas line's just going to coming. The gas line's coming. It's going to be, the president's going to make it happen. Is going to, and my question was, well, but again, how does it get paid for? And if the economics don't work out, are you okay with the federal government picking up the tab or what? I mean, there's all these problems, but people are just convinced that it is the solution to all. I mean, yes, it would be a great solution to our problems if it could work out. But I'm just not convinced after years and years of, hey, it's just around the corner. Hey, it's just around the corner. Hey, it's just around the corner. I'm not convinced that that's actually what's going to happen here.
Yeah. And people say, oh, well, we've got a federal debt guarantee that, 30 some odd billion in federal debt guarantee. That's going to make it happen. That's what, I've been told, that's, Brad, what you never consider. You don't consider the impact of the federal debt guarantee. Well, all the federal debt guarantee does is lower debt costs. It doesn't eliminate costs. It's not a subsidy in the sense that it takes, $10 billion worth of expenses that have to occur, or $10 billion of investment, and wipe it off because the federal government's going to pay for it. That's not what the debt guarantee is. What the debt guarantee says is if you issue debt and the federal government backs it up, if the project fails, once it gets going, if the project fails, then the federal government will pay out the debt payments. And what that does is lower your debt costs from, I don't know, just to pick numbers out of thin air, from 10% debt costs down to 6% debt costs. I mean, federal government debt costs right now are 4%. I mean, federal government debt issuances are 4%. So it's going to have some premium over that. So it lowers your debt costs down. Yes, that improves the economics, but not hugely. It's not like you wipe out, it's not like the federal government's going to pay a $10 billion direct subsidy to take out a bunch of the costs. It's just going to lower your debt costs. And that's not enough I've run the economics both a long time ago and currently. That's not enough to move the needle a whole lot, that you're going to reduce the debt costs. So yeah, people go around saying, oh, well, federal government's going to come in with this debt guarantee and that's going to solve everything. That's not going to solve much.
No, I mean, we were just talking about this a few weeks ago. I mean, it was 2017, almost 8 years ago, they were saying it's 44 billion. I mean, today with tariffs and steel and changes and of course costs going up, I mean, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about an $80 billion project?
Oh, you could be. I mean, the contingency factor, the way you do these deals is you sort of price them based upon the market of the day, and then you put in a contingency factor. The contingency factor on something like this has got to be huge, because you don't know what direction the administration is going to go. You don't know what's going to happen out there in the world in terms of equipment costs, or in terms of materials costs, or in terms of even employee costs. You just don't know. So by the time you add in the contingency factor, you could get a fairly high number. And even if you exclude the contingency factor, and even if you layer in lower debt costs,
right,
it's not going to move those economics all that much. So I think to get back to the point, the people in April who were saying, yeah, we're going to get signed deals, we're going to have a signing party at this conference in Alaska in early June, I think they were really overextending themselves. They were out over their skis in a big way. And we've just seen that. We've seen that play out once we got to the conference.
Yeah. And I mean, again, this is not one of those things where you want to be able to tell people I told you so, because you're sitting in the second train car when you said, I told you you were going to go over the cliff, you want to be on the outside watching the train go by, kind of thing. So it's a difficult thing. Brad, what are you watching for the next couple weeks here? What are you keeping an eye on in Alaska on this, since we're kind of in the off season, so to speak?
Next big thing up is governor's vetoes. What's he going to veto? How's he going to explain the vetoes? Are the vetoes going to be so big the legislature gets motivated to come back in? Likely not. How many bills is he going to veto? I read an interesting fact. They haven't sent him the tax bill, the bill that
SB 113. They haven't sent it to him yet.
Yeah, and they're waiting on. The speculation was they might wait until December to send that to him, so that he would have to veto it right in front of the start of the new legislature, and potentially use it as a way of overturning, having that legislature come in and overturn it. But I think the vetoes, the budget vetoes are the next big thing, and we're going to see whether the governor's going to walk the walk or walk the talk about, cutting down costs and, controlling spending and all the sort of stuff he said over the last 8 years, or whether once again he's going to, make a few clips here and there and then sign the bill and go on from there. But that's the next big thing on my.
You think he's going to veto the funding for HB 57?
I think he will do some veto of it, just to make his point. Whether he will go down below the $600 mark, what is it, $700 now? So whether per student BSA,
right,
increase. So whether he will
580 or whatever,
whether he will go down below the 600 mark, but I think he will certainly make some veto. And I know the school boards are just sitting on pins and needles out there, wondering what the hell. How do they do their budget for the coming school year that starts at the same time? How do they do their budget for the coming school year without knowing what the governor's number is going to be? But I think he'll make some veto there, and
that'll just set us up for next year. That'll just set us up for the argument for next year. More school funding. That's what it'll be.
Oh yeah.
All right, Brad. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming in. It's good to see you, my friend.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
All right, we'll see you later. Folks, hour 2, dead ahead, the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program for this Tuesday edition of the show. And we just finished up with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, and he came in for what we call the weekly top 3, the top 3 issues that he believes are important for us to be paying attention to here as we crank along every week. And this week's were very they were kind of separate, but they were all very interesting, and they were all kind of integral to what's going on in the state here in the future, but a little bit of a different flavor and a different flair for what we have going on. So I've got some thoughts on some of these things, and I want to recap some of these ideals. Now, normally we will finish up hour 2 of the show with Chris Story, who comes in every week to deliver a dose of positivity. He's a kind of a bit of a life coaching PMA guru, right? I mean, the guy is he's super good. But this week he's traveling, and so it's going to be me and you. And maybe I'll try, and I haven't decided if I should just bite the bullet and just do some good news discussions, some good news stories, instead of attempting to try and fill Chris's shoes for for positivity or whatever. But we'll see. We'll see what we can come up with here. By the end of the show, I'll have made a decision as to whether or not we're just doing good news or whether I'm going to try and tackle the positivity aspect of it. Because I mean, I've got some ideas, but again, I don't have anything like pre-planned. So maybe that's part of my problem, is that I should have planned this a little better. All right. So let me first and foremost take a crack at some of the things that Brad was talking about here, in regards to the weekly top 3. So I want to start off with the idea of giving notice to Blue Crest, where Brad was talking about the potential for shutting down the Cosmopolitan unit, and how that could be the state attempting to exact pressure on Blue Crest to do certain things to try and maybe potentially facilitate a deal or a merger between Hillcorp and Blue Crest, or maybe just to be seen to be doing something in regards to the economics and to the gas shortage and things like that. The problem here is that, as we've been saying for many, many years on this program, and we were just talking about here a moment ago with Brad, the economics of these situations cannot be overcome with hopes and dreams, with wishes, with politics. You can't overcome the economics of the situation simply because you want to. And this could go back to whether or not it's gas in the Cook Inlet and development of a potential new discovery or field or find out there. Or we could be talking about the LNG line that the president has said that he wants to see happen here in the state of Alaska. We would all like those things to happen. I mean, we here in the state I would love to be burning Alaska gas in, power generation units, heating homes. I'd love to be doing all of that stuff. But the problem is, of course, is that the economics of getting that gas from the North Slope is just not feasible at this moment. And so, just like what's going on with the president and everything else, this thing with the Cosmopolitan unit seems to be just some more external pressure on something that's already, I don't know if struggling is the right word, but it's already kind of frenetic in there. They've already got the Blue Crest has already got a $30 million note with the state of Alaska through their development that they're working on paying back and doing everything. And they're trying to raise $50 million in investment for new drilling and new exploration wells and everything else. I don't know how much more pressure you want to put on them. And if you're trying to push them into this thing with Hillcorp, of course, to me, the main concern that I have is that Hillcorp already has a virtual monopoly on on gas exploration and development in the Cook Inlet. And do we really want to hand them even more, I guess, leverage over what's happening here in the state of Alaska? That's part of the problem right now. But anyway, so those are just kind of my rambling thoughts for Brad on the Blue Crest thing. I don't know exactly what they're trying to go for, but it's not like you can get any more blood from a stone. And the reaction from the administration saying, "Oh, well, there's, we've got people who would love to come in here and build. We've got people who'd love to come in here and take over those leases." Well, where are they? If the state takes back if the state takes back some of Blue Crest leased acreage, Boyle said there are, quote, definitely companies and entities that are willing to put money there to bring that gas to market. Well, where are they right now? Because Blue Crest has been trying to find them. Where are they right now? So I think there's a lot of posturing going on here in this regard. Maybe that's just me, but I feel like there's a lot of posturing happening on that. And we'll see what the answer is here throughout the rest of the season as Blue Crest responds to this, and we'll see where it goes from there. As far as number 2 goes, and this opinion piece and this analysis, we're gonna, oh man, this professor, and I think we should go into this letter, this opinion piece from I've already forgotten his name. Kevin Barry. There we go. From Kevin Barry. And I just, and maybe I'm taking this wrong. I guess I should start this off by saying maybe I'm just taking this wrong and I should just learn to lighten up. But when somebody is treating me like I'm a 5-year-old and saying, that we should just be saying please and thank you, please and thank you, and please and thank you. These are nice words to say. I mean, I understand the intent, and I agree with the premise that being polite is always good and nice, but to continue to go to the government, which is our servant, not our master, right? That's the premise that we all work under, that government is the servant, not the master. When we go to government and say, please and thank you, please and thank you, please and thank you, this is part of the problem. When the tables have turned and the dynamic has changed to where we are no longer the masters, but we are the servants begging the masters for a slight, please, sir, can I have some more? Right? I mean, that's what they're asking for right now. So Kevin Barry, how much time do I have here? I'm not going to have enough time to get into this. This is the worst part. I get just up to a head of steam, and then I got to take a commercial break. And I feel like when I get on a roll, I want to get on a roll, and I want to be there. I want to get going, man. I want to get going, and I want to keep going. So we're gonna think. But again, this is very reminiscent of the letter to the editor from at the end of May from Thomas Brooks, the guy from Anchorage, who had a letter to the editor. This I can get to here in 2 minutes because again, this is such a snapshot into what is wrong with this state of Alaska. And I would argue it's not just simply an Alaskan problem. I'm not naive enough to say it's only happening in Alaska. This is happening all over the place. But we have become a society who is so dependent at every level on government for everything that we do that we just can't wrap our brains around the idea that somehow government's not involved in what's going on here. But this article, this letter to the editor from Thomas Brooks, talking about the erosion of education and childcare is pushing Alaska families out. He said, "We moved to Alaska 50 years ago, established our careers, and raised a family. We have 2 kids, both in their 30s. One lives in Alaska, one lives outside. We're batting 500, basically half and half, right? The one that's outside returned to Alaska for a while after college, but then left to obtain an advanced degree in an Alaska-related field. Post-PhD in 2019, the kid considered returning, but the budget cuts to the university probably made the difference, and now he's firmly planted outside. The other kid recently presented us with our first grandchild. Both parents are working and have a new home and now face a staggering child care bill. Additionally, one of them is a teacher and is concerned about the steady erosion of school funding and increasing class sizes. If their situation becomes marginal, it would be easy to envision their departure to better opportunities outside. They have portable skills." This is all about personal choice, right? One kid went outside, came back, then left to, then left to obtain an advanced degree and was looking at coming back in the state. And when Dunleavy made the potential, and of course, no cuts were made in 2019. There were proposed cuts, but they never appeared, right? Because everybody rolled over and wet on themselves and draconian and, dogs and cats, apocalyptic, blah, all the things that were going on. But he stayed outside. That was still a choice from him or her, whoever the kid was. But what gets me is the other kid. They presented us with our first grandchild recently. So they just had a child. Both of them are working and they have a new home. So they made all these decisions that both of them should work, that they bought a new home, and that they should have a kid. And now they face a child care bill. Surprise. I mean, did you not think that this was going to happen? And see, that's the problem. These parents, and by the way, he said, we moved to Alaska 50 years ago. We established, Thomas is here. Thomas, why aren't you offering to take the kids? To alleviate that, why is it the government's, this used to be a familial responsibility, right? The parents would take care of them. The grandparents would take care of the kids, the grandkids. If mom and dad both had to work or what, I mean, where is the familial and your own responsibility inside your own family unit? Why is it the government's responsibility to provide you with childcare based on your own choices? Oh, this is going to be good. It's going to be good. I'm about to get into this. We're going to continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, bring the bell over on YouTube. Come on out on Facebook or YouTube or Rumble if you want to watch us online during the break. We'll be back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. What's going on? Hold on a second. Come here. Boy, she makes it so difficult. Okay. Everybody gets to say hi to my granddaughter, as my wife says. Here's your granddaughter. It's my wife's dog. She was urgent. She was looking for love this morning. She was looking for love, wasn't she? All right. So she wanted to, she does this sometimes. She'll bust into the studio. The door doesn't latch 100%. And so she'll bust into the studio sometime. We're in the middle of something. And you'll see me reach out and try and swing the door closed. But this morning she just wanted to come in and sit here and kept hopping up on my leg while we were talking. So she wanted to get some loving here this morning. All right. Harold says maybe they should step up and take care of the grandkids while their kids are at work. I mean, right? That was my first thought. I mean, that was my first thought on this is why would you not take care of your own kids? You take the time to write an article. You take the time to write an article about how the government needs to take care of all this stuff, but you don't offer to do your own thing. That doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't make any sense at all as to why we would, absolutely. Harold says, our granddaughter all but moved in. She visits her parents' house every day and hops back in the car to where she wants to go. Well, it is what it is. It is what it is. All right. What else we got here? I see that. And first of all, Anthony, you made a classic blunder. The first of all is to never get involved in a land war in Asia. The second one is to engage Randy about the PFD. You never do that. You've made the classic blunder right there. Let's see. Okay. Are you done? Did you get enough love? All right. She got enough love now. She wanted to get down. Yeah, wow. There's you can't argue to Randy with facts. You can't, here's the problem with an argument that you have to have with Randy. To have a rational argument, you both have to agree on a set of core foundational principles. And Randy does not believe that the PFD is the people's money. He believes it's the government's money to spend. He doesn't believe that it is the people's rightful payment for their thing. So if you can't even agree on that fundamental principle of where the money's coming from and what it was intentionally intended for and meant to be, then you can't, the argument is, it doesn't matter. It's just you're never going to change anybody's mind in that regard. All right. One problem with the elites is that they live in a bubble and don't deal with real world normal issues like childcare. Well, but if you're going to, they don't have to live in the real world, but don't you have to do like a pro con? Like, should we buy a new house? What's it going to cost? What is that going to be? Should we have a kid? What's that going to cost? What should that be? Shouldn't those just be kind of standard things? Shouldn't that be just like a standard, let's do the pro con, the T chart, right? The pro con, how much is it going to be? Are we doing positive now? No, we're not up to the positivity yet. I still got more to talk about. All right, let's get to it. We're 10 seconds out right now. The Michael Duke Show. Yeah, those are analytical skills. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay. So I want to go back And I want to talk a little bit about this this opinion piece that Brad was referencing. Okay. And the opinion piece, I mean, first and foremost, I know the guy's an economics professor, and that makes him much smarter than I am, I'm sure. But the fact that he talks down to, well, pretty much anybody that's listening here by saying, here's what we learned in kindergarten today, kids. Please and thank you, and please and thank you. And these are nice words that you can say. Again, saying please and thank you and please and thank you to the, to the government, which is essentially what he's doing. Thank you to our elected leaders. Thank you to our leaders. I went to my son's graduation from pre-K where they sang, please and thank you, please and thank you. These are nice words that we can say. This is an example of the important social emotional learning that they work on every day in school, in preschool, in addition to learning phonics and counting skills to prepare them for kindergarten. It's a reminder that when people step up, we should say thank you. I mean, do you hear this in a Mr. Rogers type voice, only not nearly as soothing as you would like? He said he recently wrote a paper to ask our legislative leaders to choose to invest in our children, our families, and our workforce. I asked them to keep Alaska's promise to families across the state. What promise did Alaska make to families across the state to support early childhood educators and kids? That meant reinstating the $14 million in childcare funding in the state budget, despite a challenging fiscal situation. Again, as long as my ox is not being gored, I'm all okay with you spending that money. As long as my stuff gets taken care of, I'm all okay with spending the money. Look, from my perspective, I fully expect that all of our oxes are going to get gored eventually. And if it has to be now, and it has to be me, then okay. I guess that's just the way it is. But he goes on to do this whole sing-song. Thank you to the leaders in Juneau for keeping their promise. Thank you to our leaders in Juneau who showed that investing in kids is bipartisan. Thank you to our leaders who've shown Alaska can invest in its children, our families, and our future. He said, I have several friends who have welcomed new children into their families in the last few weeks. Congratulations. They are dual income families made up of business leaders, teachers, and community leaders who can participate fully in Alaska's economy because they will have access to quality child care where they can trust that their kids will be safe. Only because they have the money to do so? Only because they made the decisions to do so? I mean, this is what gets me. And here was the art. This was the paragraph that got me. Now, keep in mind, this guy is an economics professor. He's also the incoming board president at Thread Alaska, which is an organization that works to improve child development and early childhood education. It's an advocacy group for all these things. So you might think he's just writing this article because, he cares. No, he's the president of talk about some self-serving. Anyway, here's the paragraph that gets me on this whole thing. I want to thank our leaders in Juneau who are making investments to make sure that access extends to more families, that more mothers and fathers can work if they choose, and more kids have access to quality care that prepares them for a lifetime of learning. This funding enables more families to have access to the dignity of work without sacrificing the safety of their children. The dignity. I don't know exactly how to. In one way, I want to read that like, What if I'm not working outside the home? That's not that I don't have dignity. Is that a dig on stay-at-home parents, moms or dads who stay at home? Or is that s- the, the sacrificing the safety? Who in their right mind would sacrifice the safety of their children to try and pursue a career? I mean, a monster would, not a real parent, right? So I'm trying to get all the nuances of this article. That people have made decisions to do all these things. And again, going back to the last article, where's your support network? Where's your parents? Where are your friends, your neighbors? Do you know the lady down the street? Do you know have you looked outside the system? Why is it government's job to do all of these things for everybody right out of the gate? That's the biggest question to me. When did we turn at when is it in this country that we kind of turn the corner to where everything is government's the government's got to do that for us. We couldn't possibly do the math on our own. And maybe we've been sold a bill of goods. Maybe we generationally have been sold a bill of goods that you were told that, you could go out, you could get a good education, you could get a good job, that both of you could work and have the dream, and that you could both have careers and kids and everything else. And look at where we're at today. That there would be no sacrifice, that you could have everything. And I don't know if it's necessarily true, folks. I don't know if it's necessarily true that both parents can focus 100% on their careers and farm their kids off to somebody else and expect that it's all going to be okay. Right? Somebody's got to be paying attention and focusing on the upbringing of especially in their younger years. In my case, it was my wife. In other cases, I've known families where the dad is the one that's in there doing the teaching and doing the thing and taking care of it, and mom's out there, winning the bread. I don't care, but you can't keep sacrificing your kids on the altar of me, I guess, of narcissism, of I want everything that I want and I want it all. And because I can't do it on my own, I need the government to come in and help provide me with the child care to be able to keep my extravagant lifestyle, this kind of artificial thing going and going and going. And that's the only way we could keep it is if we've got the governmental monies to make sure that we could keep these things rolling. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to keep the fallacy rolling. I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with this whole article. I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful that we did all these things and the government's involved in all of this. And I'm glad. And I'm an economist, and I'm continuing to push for more governmental intervention in the market because that makes sense. Especially in a time when we're facing not just a challenging fiscal situation, we have a fiscal crisis. We're not talking about, things are just a little bit tight. We are $1.5 billion short for next year. $1.5 billion. And sure, $14 million in the scheme of $1.5 billion doesn't seem to be much. But if you start cutting here and there, $1 million here and $1 million there, pretty soon you're talking about real money. Right? You're talking about real money. I guess I just, the whole point of this is with both of these letters, the opinion piece and then the letter to the editor, is that I just don't understand why do we continue to look to government to solve all of our problems. I have no ill will or no animosity towards Thomas or towards Kevin, the people who wrote these things. But I guess my question is, again, to Thomas, why Did you offer to watch your grandkids? If they're facing such a staggering childcare bill, have you offered, why don't you just bring the kid over here? No? Why is it government's responsibility to take care of those things? And the same question to Kevin. Why is it government's responsibility? Well, because the promise that the state of Alaska, no. Why? People have made decisions. When is it their responsibility? Is it government's responsibility to protect people from all their own bad decisions? Because if that's the case, I've got a list, right? I've got a list. But this is where we're at. And this is, quite honestly, this is how the whole system comes down. When government becomes the solution to every problem, even ones you didn't know you have. All right. We got to go. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I guess I'm going to do some good news. I don't know if I'm in the mindset. Let me see where I'm at. I mean, I just might talk about movies or something here, but I don't know. All right, we'll be back. I'm a horrible Chris Story. We'll be back with more in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
They're looking for government to take responsibility. There is the lie that government funding and responsibilities is the people's. It's our money and lives that are getting taken and spent. It's all about wealth and power distribution. Okay. Yeah, I agree. Whoever wrote that article, says Harold, doesn't value families. They value the corporate bottom line. Yeah. I mean, well, again, there's some self-interest in that article because, again, they work for Threat Alaska, which is it's an advocacy group for early pre-K education, right? I mean, there's monies involved in that thing. Melissa said, can we also admit that childcare is expensive as hell? I was fortunate enough to be able to stay home, but a couple times I debated going to work. The cost of childcare kept me happy. Yes. I mean, yes. We can agree that childcare is very expensive. What is it? $700-800 a month now for kids? That's probably on the cheap side. But yeah, I mean, you can imagine that it's going to cost you $12,000 a year in childcare. $12,000 a year in childcare for each kid is probably what you can expect as you go through. That's probably somewhere in that neighborhood. Good Lord, Henry, what is the deal here? I've got like a full page of, okay. Let me go back here. Let me see here. All right, here we go. I think I'm back to where I was before. There we go. Their kid has a PhD and looking to the university for a living. That was fun. Now we have AI. When I'm having a bad day, I use the AI function to write my resignation letter. Oh man. You'll have to You have to send me a copy of those. How bad is it? How bad is it? You want kids, stay home and raise your kids. Yeah, I mean that was never a thing for me. There was never a question. You know? It was never a question. If we had kids, we were raising the kids. That was the thing. That was the primary thing. Because raising the kids is only it's a 10-year window, right? 10, 12, 14-year window. And then they're getting ready to. And if you're planning on sending your kids to regular school, how much time is it really a sacrifice, right? If you have, let's just say you had 3 kids and you had them 2 years apart, that's a 6-year window. I mean, I don't know how fast you have kids. We had one that was 1 year apart, one that was 6. So, but you would only have to have them in daycare for that 5-6 year window, right? Before they went to school, and then they're babysat all day at school, so how much, anyway, I don't want to get into it. I'm not going to get into it. Never mind. Only an advocate of corporate slavery would espouse work over family. I 100%. Did somebody actually say something? Oh no, it must have been something I was reading. Bradley says the sooner your kids start schooling, the better the social brainwashing sticks. Well, I mean, I asked the question, how did we get here? Through years of social engineering of people, kids being told in school that the solution to every problem is government. The solution is $1,500 a month. Is that what it costs? Melissa says it's more like $1,500 a month. $1,500 a month for childcare. Well, how can you afford to work at that point? Get a second job. If you got 2 kids at home, forget about it. You're definitely staying. One of you is definitely staying home to the tune of $3,000 a month. Yeah. Randy said you can talk about your personal philosophy on how to be happy, or at least how not to be unhappy. I could do that, I suppose. I went to an educational summit in Arizona. Oh, don't have enough time. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Okay, one final segment. This is normally where Chris Story comes in, and I've been ranting and frothing at the mouth about something, and really, I'm worked up. Somebody mentioned, property taxes or occupational licensing, 2 of my biggest pet peeves, and I just right. I mean, that's what it was, And Chris comes in and he strokes my fur and oh, it's all okay. It's all okay. I am not as good at that as Chris Story is, right? I'm not as good as that as Chris Story. So I said I was going to try and take his place and maybe fill in for him today. I've got some good news stories, but I feel like I feel like I've got to grow. And I think Randy had a very good idea. I know. Shocking that I think that Randy had a good idea. Randy is a very good person, and he and I disagree on a lot, but we also agree on a lot. And Randy has said when I was asking before the break, should I just do the good news or should I talk about, and he said, you can talk about your personal philosophy on how to be happy, or at least how to not be unhappy. And I think those are actually two separate things, right? And some of you who've listened to this, I'm just getting comfortable here. Just getting comfortable. Just slip into my sweater and put on your slippers as I talk to you about my personal philosophy of how to be happy, or at least not unhappy. Oh, this is the good voice. Are you ready? So, if you've been listening, you kind of already know some of the stuff that's coming in this discussion. Can you hear my dog? Sorry, he's snoring under the console here. And there was a time in my life, about 15 years ago. And I was a very, very angry man. I was super angry. I was agitated by everything. And I was driven to succeed. I wanted to do things and everything else. But at the same time, I was unhappy and I was angry. And at that point, I had come to the conclusion that I was, one, paying attention to the wrong things. And two, I hadn't set my chief definite aim or my life goal, if that's what you want to call it. I wanted an amorphous, I wanted something amorphous. I wanted success, whatever that meant. I wanted to be recognized for what I did in my job in selling or advertising. I wanted to do well on the air. I wanted to do all these things, but I didn't have an absolute outline and a plan. And on top of that, I was so sucked into the day-to-day politics of what was going on in the country partially through the radio show and the job that I was going on there, that I was a pretty angry guy. I would come, I've told the story of my wife pulling me aside and said, "You're frightening the children." Not because I was threatening, but because I was just angry all the time. And that's not something that a dad wants to hear, right? No dad wants to hear that your children are frightened of you. And so that was a moment of self-reflection. And when Chris Story and I talk a lot, whatever his topic of the day is, whatever his lesson of the day is, you will find usually inside those lessons every Tuesday that Chris appears on the program, you will find a nugget of self-reflection is a key component to it. Because if we just go blithely on doing the same things that we've always done, that's the definition of insanity. We're always going to get the same result. So until you start looking inward and going, what am I really looking for? And that's when I realized it, that I was focusing on things that didn't affect me or were out of my control. I mean, it's like the old Irish, it's the serenity prayer, right? I mean, God grant me the wisdom to know the things that I can change, the things that I can't change, and the wisdom to know the difference. I know I just butchered that horribly, but you get my point. How old is that saying for people to suddenly be able to, for it suddenly to be relevant and make sense today? How long has that saying been around prior to the day of the internet or the telex or the telegraph? Right? This is not just a problem that was born of today or of technology today. This is a problem that's been going on for a long time. People have been worried about things that they can't control, things that they can change and things that you can't change. And it seems like we get so focused sometimes on things that we can't change that it just emotionally wraps us up and consumes us instead of finding the path of what we can do. What steps can we take? So this whole thing started off, and this is why I'm horrible at this. This because I ramble. This is just my style. I'm a storyteller. What can I do? The whole point of how can you be happy or at least not unhappy? My personal solution to this was to cut out of my life anything, and I know I make a joke a lot of time about ranting on the air or getting upset about something, but for the most part, I want you to know sometimes I'm passionate, but I'm not angry. I'm not really angry anymore. I mean, there are a few occasional exceptions to that rule. All right. I will be the first to admit there are occasionally times when I get, but for the most part, I'm not angry. I'm passionate about it. Okay. And so I analyzed myself after my wife came to me and said, your children are afraid of you because you're so angry all the time. And this because I was doing I was watching cable news. This is post 9/11, right? And the world was changing and things were going on and everything else. And I was watching a lot of the news on the nights and the weekends. And, I just decided that I couldn't change what was because I was mad about what was happening in the world, what was happening in America, what was happening. And I said, I can't make a difference there. It's quite honestly why I ended up running for office in Fairbanks. Not that made me happy, right? We're talking about how I'm being happy. But I felt like I wanted to make a difference locally because I had just given up. I had just given up all my focus on the things that I couldn't control nationally, all the big news stories and the worldwide stuff and everything else. We get so tied up. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I see pop into the chat room or send me a message or post on Facebook, how outraged they are over something that's going on in Washington, D.C. or Botswana or on the moon or someplace else that they have no control over, but they're outraged, I tell you, by it. And I can understand because I was there. But let me tell you what I found out. That doesn't matter. Let that go. Focus on what's important. Focus on what's in your community. Focus on what's happening in your neighborhood, in your city, maybe all the way up to what's in your state. And focus on what's important, which is your family. I was spending a lot of time spinning my wheels on things that didn't matter. I should have been focusing more on my family. And I changed, and I did. But again, that serenity prayer of knowing the difference between the things you can change and the things you can't change. There was a world of difference in that for me. That I no longer focused on the national news. I mean, I know now that there's riots in LA, right? And I don't understand why, other than there's something, I understand it was the ICE, the blah, blah, blah. But am I focused on it? No. But there are people who are glued to their television right now. Across the country. Well, it could spread. Well, it could. Can you fix that now? Can you make if you watch that TV harder, can you fix it? No? Well, then turn it off and go love your children. Turn it off and go make a difference in your community. Turn it off and go fix something in your life, in your business, in your coworker. Go out and engage there. Stop getting sidelined and distracted with all these bread and circus things that we see out there. That's the answer, in my opinion, to happiness. The answer is to ignore stuff, but it is to ignore the things you can't change and to focus on the things you can. I guess that is the heart of it. So I'm sure I totally sucked compared to Chris, but that's just what was on my heart this morning. So hopefully you got something out of that. Oh, the dogs are awake now. All right, well, we got to go. Thank you, my friends. Tomorrow is Wednesday. Somebody's coming in. I don't remember who. I got all mushy. I can't remember now. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. All right, my friends. Well, I mean, hopefully I did okay. I probably should outline this and write it down. Sometimes just riffing off the cuff. But Randy's comment just kind of thought, I can talk about why I'm happy or unhappy, or, how to be happy, or at least how not to be unhappy. And those are two separate things for sure. All right, my friends, we will see you guys tomorrow. Now I'm freaking myself out. Who's coming on the show tomorrow? Is somebody coming on the show tomorrow? Or is it Thursday? I can't. It's Friday? Oh, Monday. Never mind. I'm working on guests for tomorrow. There we go. See you tomorrow. See, things I can't change right there. All right, we'll see you, folks. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.